And good morning. It's time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by Renegade River in Spring Lake. And here is your host, Mike Hewitt.
Hey, good morning. I got to tell you, I thought we were well into spring and it's feeling a little winter again. What do you think, Jim Riley? You're ready to go boating and sailing and all the things that you do?
You know, we had the WEMOG, West Michigan Outdoor Group, had a kayak event planned. Actually, I believe it's still on, but it's too cold for somebody my age to kayak. So you bet. Hey, you know, it's going to be in the 70s on the weekend. It's sunny out now. I've planted grass seed. I mean, life is good.
He's always Mr. Positive. Have you ever noticed that, folks?
Yeah, well, let's see if that's consistent throughout the rest of the show today.
I'm kind of fibbing because I've never known it to be true until just now. Listen, as the old saying goes, like a rose between two thorns, we have a guest in the studio with us today. Jenifer Walsh?
Yep, that's correct.
Is with the LST393 Ship Museum. Am I saying that right?
Veterans Museum.
Veterans Museum?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about it.
We are located in downtown Muskegon.
Perfect.
And we have been honoring our veterans here in Muskegon County. We have over 4,000 that were in World War II. We have military items and other museum artifacts on the ship.
Well, I have been on that LST393, and you add in, of course, the USS Silverside Submarine Museum. What a gem! And anybody, I'm not crazy about the traffic patterns around Muskegon, but one of the really cool things about the current traffic pattern is that you drive on Shoreline Drive right by this incredible piece of history. I believe there are only 2 remaining LSTs in the country.
Yes, that's correct. There's one in southern Indiana.
Wasn't there a whole bunch to start with, though?
Oh,
I mean, they were rolling them off like VWs.
There were 1,051.
Wow, so that's a whole bunch of ships, and that's a pretty big vessel, right?
Yes.
Do you think is it still functional?
It possibly could be.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Do they start the engines on that like they do the Silversides on Memorial Weekend?
No, we don't.
Okay, but I would imagine it would be possible with enormous amounts of money.
Correct.
There we go.
I got to tell you, one of the things that really drew me to it, tell both of you actually and everyone, is that everyone's heard me talk about family. I'm convinced that everything else we do politically is a waste unless we save the American family. And part of doing that, an integral part of doing that is education. So when I look at the LST, to me, it goes beyond it goes beyond just some facts and figures. The boat is so long. The boat is. I got reading the website for the LST393, and it's like a diary of where the ship went, what it was doing. And listen, folks, anyone that's ever talked to me on the education path, I'm always interested in why something happened. Why'd they build the darn ship in the first place? Why was it on this date doing this? What was the reasoning behind it? And to me, it goes to building critical thinking rather than memorization. And so when you and I, Jenifer was in my shop, Renegade River, and we got talking about these things, I said, I've got to get you on the show because it's right here in our backyard. And so if folks are looking for something to do with young folks, your family, rather than looking at your iPad all day long at a restaurant, like I've often joked where 4 people are sitting in a restaurant, they're each on their iPhone or their iPad or their smartphone talking to somebody else, somewhere else, when we've got such a treasure right here that it speaks to why we're America. Am I off base there, Jenifer?
No, you're correct. It is amazing when you go on the ship and you feel like, wow, there were 28 Sherman tanks right here on the deck that I'm standing.
Right.
And the crew, there were over 115 crew members, and then all the others that were either with the cargo or the tanks that sailed with.
Well, let's talk about the sail part. That ship has some highlights in its career. It was where was its biggest landing at?
That was D-Day on Omaha Beach in Normandy.
Sends a shiver up your spine when you think about it. It really does. At least it does
June
me.
6, 1944, an incredible day. And, of course, what was it, I believe it was the 50th or 60th anniversary
70th.
Last year.
70th
Last year, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, when you can stand in a hold of that and know that there were Shermans that rolled off of that onto the beach, some folks didn't make it. And the next day, that ship was turned into a casualty vessel trying to get American soldiers back to England. Mm-hmm. That's a powerful thing. And we take our liberty. The young generations, and I hate to sound like an old man, but I am, the younger generations don't seem to be able to get their head around what all was put into making us be safe, to be in America in the first place. So when I see a ship like the ship we're talking about and the history that goes with it, it literally, folks, sends a shiver down my spine. It's so important that people learn this and that they take their families to it and they embrace it. That's America to me.
Well, if you want to do what you just suggested, all families ought to do, and I'm very lucky that when I was a youngster, my father and mother took me to a variety of different museums and things of that sort. Anytime? Can they just mosey on over? Is it open all the time?
Right now, we are only open on this weekend. It is free for Armed Forces Day on Saturday. And then after that, we are open 7 days a week from 10 to 5 p.m.
So during the summertime?
Yep, during the summer.
I think you told me in the shop it's a wee bit cold in the winter aboard the old vessel.
An icebox.
Icebox. There you go.
Now, wait a sec. Armed Forces Day is this weekend, and that is, I think, very easily confused with Memorial Day and any number of other holidays and days that we celebrate and remember the members of the armed forces. Explain what Armed Forces Day is, and I have been on the LST in the past. Maybe you can, on Armed Forces Day, and you're making faces that maybe I ought to explain what Armed Forces Day is.
Tell us, Jim.
But you do have some events planned for that day, do you not?
Actually, this year we really do not have much planned. It is free to visitors. The day before, we do have a job fair on the ship.
That's the big job fair, which is an annual event. Now, this is what, the 3rd or the 4th?
4th.
Okay.
What is it?
Talk about that a little bit.
Tell us about it. What is that?
It is open to veterans. Also, the public is welcome. We have about approximately 60 employers that will be there.
So it's literally a job fair.
Yes.
On the ship.
On the ship.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did someone think about putting those two ideas together?
I know Holly Hughes has been working with the.
Local state representative
And
Holly Hughes.
Yeah, Holly is our state representative for.
Yep. Now she sits on a Veterans Affairs Committee in Lansing. Is that right?
She's been working here in Muskegon
for a long time. She's been on the show
Affairs.
a couple times now, a few times. Okay, very, very nice. I would have never thought to put those two concepts together, but good for her and the people that are doing it. That goes along with what those folks were fighting for.
Well, you know, there's a little history too, which I don't have, and perhaps you two can fill me in. But I've been in Muskegon County now for many decades at this point, and I remember driving by whatever the road happened to have been at the time, but that is now shoreline. And I saw among other groups of ships kind of docked there, rusting away, was this black, not very attractive-looking thing tied up to the dock, and it was called, I believe, Highway 16. You've got a little bit of background on that, how we ended up with Highway 16?
Well, we ended up with Highway 16 after the war. It came here.
Wait, stop. What is Highway 16? I know it's ugly, but what is it? Is it a boat, a ship, a plane, Superman?
I think she's getting to that.
Are you trying to tell me to shut up, Jim?
Well, no. I think we have somebody who has the answer that you have requested.
I'm ready.
Was the LST turned into Highway 17. After the war, it was slated to go to the Pacific Theater.
Okay.
It was in New Orleans to be painted from the gray to camouflage to go to the Pacific. During that time, the U.S. bombed Japan and the war ended. So the ship never made it to the Pacific, came up here and was bought and shipped here to be a car ferry. And that turned into the Highway 16.
Fascinating.
And what happened was it was purchased as so much of the surplus World War II, any number of things. Actually, if you get to a certain age, your grandfather's age, we had Army surplus stores all over the country. You could buy helmets and belts and all sorts of things. And all of these ships were available for use for private owners. And in this case, it was used to haul between Michigan and Wisconsin, which, by the way, I believe it hooked up with what was, of course, Highway 16 at the time, just continued on. The problem was that this is a flat-bottom boat, and you can imagine taking this boat with how many tanks, these Sherman tanks are big tanks, up on the deck. It cannot have been very stable. Taking it from the United States all the way across the Atlantic, and as we know, tremendous storms that they could have faced, and making it over to Europe and to D-Day. Well, because it was flat bottom and because it had a single engine, and I have a relatively large recreational boat with a single engine, and they are a beast to park, to pull into the dock. And it turned out not to be the greatest the transportation ship around. So it's sitting along the dock for many, many years, and then bingo, a group of, I think, incredible folks said, hey, wait a minute, this is one of the rarest things in the United States. It is one of only two LSTs, and in particular, this 393 landed on the beach on D-Day and created a little organization and put in enormous amounts of work.
Lots of work to restore it. Right now we are in the process of painting the ship back to the original gray.
What's the rationale for that?
Because, well, one, it never served as under the camouflage.
Sure, because it got called back.
That's right.
Because of the ending of the, that's what she was talking about earlier when we bombed Japan. It serving with that camouflage was never necessary. Mm-hmm. It turned around and we got it. Difference between Armed Services Day or Armed Forces Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day honors veterans, and Armed Forces Day are specifically recognizing those who are serving.
Well,
that was put forward by Truman in 49, who led that.
All right, Memorial Day is for those who have fallen, those veterans of all services who were killed in the line of service in defending our country. Veterans Day is for all of those veterans who are alive. Now, we at the same time will give consideration and certainly heartfelt thoughts and prayers to those who've passed, but Veterans Day is for those who are alive. And Armed Forces Day, which I'm a little fuzzy as to the difference between Armed Forces Day and Veterans Day, but Armed Forces Day celebrates those who I guess are in the service today.
That makes sense.
The various services, which includes, of course, Coast Guard, the United States Air Force, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy. And to me, it's one of those days that kind of slides by without a lot of the pomp and circumstance that I believe it deserves. And I know that in the past, the LST organization has had a big day. Now, you said that in this year it's not going to be a bigger celebration than normal?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. But it's a good day to visit it nonetheless.
Oh, definitely. As
a museum, as a standalone museum, this LST, you talked about having shivers sent up your spine. You get in there, and it's not enormous. I mean, you can do the whole thing in certainly an hour or less with your children, but it's a tremendous museum, and certainly for children.
Oh, yes. My 10-year-old loves the ship.
Do classrooms come there?
Yes, we offer tours for classes.
What got me on this rampage, for lack of better words, is I'm in fact, Jim, we are going to do a show at some point about higher education. And, when they're doing these, I read this big, long article about a California university where it was an art class, and the prerequisite for the class is when you take the final test, you have to do it naked.
Yeah, that's your tax dollars at work. It's incredible.
And the professor's naked.
Matter of fact, this is a very highly respected University of California, Santa Barbara, a hard school to get into.
Now, and that professor, when he's not doing that in his free time, he's taking Obama telephones and going across the Mexican border, giving the Mexican potential illegal immigrants directions on how to pierce our border with a free phone.
The professor from that class?
The nude professor. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself when I'm reading that story, to me, education is about creating critical thinking. And the way to do that is to put your hands on things like this ship and to understand its history. And folks, it doesn't take a near 1,000% increase in tuition between 1980 and now to go visit this ship and learn. You can look at it from a mechanical side, from a history side, from a marine, from a naval side. There's so many different things you could learn that that go a heck of a lot further than the things that we're teaching for outrageous tuitions and tax dollars. And that's really what got me on this path with Jenifer, because I'm looking at the thing and I pulled it up on the internet after you and your husband left that evening. And the more I looked at it, the more I got excited about the possibilities for teaching young people and old alike about us. So
right, about the history.
With that, folks, we've got to go to a break, but we'll be right back. Is that right, Brian?
You are correct, sir.
Thank you. We'll see you in a minute, folks.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. Sitting in with us today, Jim Riley, our often co-host.
Unpaid volunteer.
We pay him what he's worth.
I'm going to do a class action suit to get all the back pay deemed to me.
I want to see the judge laugh at you.
Over the years.
We pay him what he's worth.
Hey.
Is it the definition of a volunteer one who does something for nothing?
Not anymore in America. No, well, as a matter of fact, there's that's changed a lot.
Now the definition of a volunteer is what? What are you trying to say?
Somebody who is forced to do something by their school system and then gets paid to do it in a lot of cases, unfortunately.
Listen, and Jenifer Walsh?
Walsh.
Why do I keep doing Welsh? She's still with us.
Because you had Welsh's grape juice.
And listen, we warned her that this is going to start getting political now. We warned her, and she stayed right here with us.
Yes, you did.
Listen, we've got a presidential election starting to get revved up.
Amazing. First debates are going to be in less than 6 months in September.
And
unbelievable.
Listen, for us political wonks, this is the exciting season.
You got that right. It is 6 months?
No, I don't.
With him, it could be 16 years, 16 days,
6 months
somewhere in there.
Ish, but it's coming soon, folks. It is amazing because it doesn't seem to me that it has been that long since we just had a big election to elect the President of the United States. And all of a sudden, boom.
The Mike Hewitt Show Facebook page getting messages. Nice math, Jim.
Okay. I'll go with that. When you're old and it's in the morning, the math.
Old, but you're too old for Common Core. This should be easier.
You should have seen my SATs in math. They were pretty good back in the day when you had to use a slide rule.
Too funny. Listen, one of the topics that's going to be a major issue in the coming presidential election, probably more so than we've seen since maybe the turn of the 20th century, literally, is illegal immigration, more than we've seen it yet at all. And both sides are going to be vitriol against each other. There are going to be some mean-spirited attacks on both sides of this. And one of the components to it is E-Verify. We talked about this in kind of off the air a little bit, but Jim, where are you at on E-Verify?
Well, why don't you explain what E-Verify is first? Because this is really an essentially a core issue in the entire legal immigration, illegal immigration debate. What is E-Verify?
It really is. Right now, at least, it is a voluntary government program for private businesses to confirm if you come in and you apply for a job, and ABC Widget Manufacturing wants to make sure that you are legally capable of being employed in the United States, they can look you up on E-Verify. That's the real...
And verify that you are, in fact, an American citizen, because it is illegal. Now, I believe it is federally illegal.
Federally.
For a company to employ a person who is not a legal citizen of the United States. As a matter of fact, to turn it around, it is illegal to hire illegal aliens.
Exactly. And E-Verify is designed to protect, and right now it is a voluntary mechanism. In fact, we've had State Representative Hooker from Grand Rapids on the show before to discuss the mechanics of it, and he was vastly better than probably both of us combined trying to describe it. Along with him was Dave Agema, who's a former state representative that also worked pretty extensively, at least on a state level, with E-Verify. They're both proponents of it. But even within the Republican Party, there are people for and people that are very, very vehemently against E-Verify for a host of different reasons. Most of them citing E-Verify as government overstep in more licensing fees and a larger government. And one of the fellows on Facebook this morning, when I asked the question, was just a pretty simple question. What are the arguments against E-Verify? And by the way, folks, just for the state the record, I also posted a separate question. What are the arguments for E-Verify? I got 3 responses for it and 17 against it. One of them says, in America, I'm going to try to find the one here. This guy says that he was a natural-born citizen, served in the United States military, but under E-Verify would not qualify legally for a job because he does not have federal ID. Now, I didn't quiz him on what that means, whether he's avoided doing a Social Security. I don't know what he is getting at, but that's an interesting take on it.
Well, I would suggest that that's a specious take. There is no such thing as federal ID. There is no federally authorized, issued, or anything federal ID identification. So, no, the matter of fact, for the most part...
He's saying, by the way, to your point, he's saying you are a Social Security number, you are a 1040, or an I-9. That's what you are as a citizen.
Well, that may be. There are many other things if you're not a citizen, and that's the issuance of green cards and various other federally produced and sometimes state-produced documentation that allows you to work. As a matter of fact, you don't need to be a citizen to be able to work in the United States. You can be here legally as a non-citizen and be employed. But to get back to the E-Verify, in theory, the reason that a company would want to utilize E-Verify is very simple. They want to make sure that if they are hiring someone, they are not going to be liable to be sued, to be shut down. We've seen this happen where the federal government will come in with a SWAT team almost and shut down a chicken processing company that has been hiring many, many illegals. Now, we don't, in theory, matter of fact, even Hillary Clinton, their videos of her just a few years ago saying that she believes that we've got to stop illegals from coming across. In particular, we've got to stop illegals from coming into our companies and taking away jobs from legal American citizens. E-Verify is a tool that companies can use, in theory, to verify that people that they are at least putting in their employment pool are legally here. The downside of it, and there are many potential downsides, but the downside is that if you do hire someone who has misrepresented who they are, because people don't have chips within their bodies, they don't have tattoos to their foreheads as to who they are, that they may very well lie and present false papers. And the courts, at least up till now, have said, well, your ignorance isn't a defense. So that if you've gone through E-Verify and you've hired somebody, because let's face it, in some cases, these employers like to hire illegals. They might even facilitate them to get false papers. And if you hire someone, if you've gone through E-Verify, you can still be at risk.
I got to tell you, let's dial back for just a moment so that everyone's aware of why we're talking about E-Verify. When you look at the illegal immigration population, I'm not taking a position for or against the knowledge that I'm not trying to get into that debate right now, but depending on who's telling the story, the numbers of illegal immigrants in America are somewhere between 16 and 50 million. So 16 at the low level and 50 million at the high level is the numbers of people. So regardless of what your stance is on illegal immigration, regardless of where you happen to be on whether we should or should not have border security, etc., there is a huge population, at the very minimum, more than twice the size of the state of Michigan's total population in illegal population.
Well, and let me add one thing that I think is really important to understand when you're looking at that number. Those people, or at least the heads of the household, not the children, of course, but those people who are here illegally, be that number in the teens or as high as 50 million, they are either working and taking jobs that would otherwise be filled by American citizens, or, and this is unfortunately where too many of them are going, they are getting government assistance. Matter of fact, in many cases, doing both. And by government assistance, that means they are getting, if they were here in Michigan, bridge cards. They're getting Obama phones. They are getting all sorts of government assistance that you would get as a low-paid or a very, very low-paid employee. I think in Michigan, if you have a taxable income of $20-some thousand a year, you're eligible for the earned income tax credit, which is neither earned, neither income, and neither a tax credit, but you can get essentially a welfare check, if you will, from the state. So the problem with illegals is that either they're working and taking jobs away, or they're not working and on assistance, or they are both, because you can be a low-paid employee and get any number of these things, and their children are, of course, being we have a requirement to educate children, and the schools have a requirement, whether it's self-imposed or not, of not asking if you are legally here. So there are some significant costs to the American public in allowing this illegal immigration to grow.
Now, when somebody's considered an undocumented worker, are they like off the books? Are they getting paid under the table?
Undocumented worker is the politically correct way of trying to say illegal immigrant, or as I call it, illegal foreign insurgency.
Okay.
You know, illegal immigrant is 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people. A foreign insurgency is somewhere between 16 million and 50 million.
Are they actually getting paid by employers?
Yes.
Some of these. Now, how will they get benefits without a Social Security number?
The federal government and most state governments are now saying you do not have to ask. This is what's caused a significant
problem. In fact, in some
problem.
areas, they're forbidding you to ask citizenship.
Yeah, and therein lies the issue. Actually, it's even worse than that, because take a state like California, where we're giving driver's licenses to illegals, but take a state like California, where you do not need to provide proof of citizenship in order to get a driver's license, but the only thing necessary as proof of citizenship in order to register to vote is a driver's license. So there is a not only are these folks here taking jobs using what we're told are scarce government services, we're encouraging them. We've created a loophole to allow them to vote, even though that flat out they are not, or at least we have no way of proving it.
Tom McMillan, who is a former state representative from the other side of the state, he writes, and this is, by the way, still on the question of what are the arguments against E-Verify. He writes, everyone will need to get the Fed's approval in order to get a job. And the Feds make tons of errors, unintentional and likely intentional. And I don't think it's a huge leap to say that currently it's citizenship. Later, one could be rejected for not paying their carbon credit, etc. And he makes some valid points with this. How far will this go? And what will they, over the point of years forward, put underneath this umbrella we call error? I tend to be for it, by the way, but I'm wrestling with it, which is why, frankly, it's one of the reasons I brought it up today. He's got a valid point.
Well, I would agree that he's got a valid point. And again, it goes back to the ultimate question to ask of our governments. Do we want to encourage illegal people to come to our country, people who are not here legally? We have a system in place that vets people. We want people in certain jobs. Certainly, if you have been to a physician of late, you can be sure, certainly in the cities, if we were not allowing physicians to come in who have been educated in other countries, many cases who are citizens of other countries, if we were not allowing these physicians, and in some cases nurses and nurse practitioners and the rest of them, if we weren't allowing them in, there would be a massive, massive shortage of physicians in our country. And so we want legal immigration, but do we want, as our public policy, to say anybody can come here, anybody can sign up, we will create loophole laws that allow anybody to vote? That appears to be our public policy today.
It is a public policy, but the long-term agenda of some of the folks that are advancing it, and by the way, I think they're wrongfully thinking this, but their thought is that these folks will become future Democratic voters. And so I
would suggest that that's a reasonable conclusion. You bet.
But I got to tell you, I think it's a little bit unfounded, because a lot of these folks that are coming in have a very strong Catholic background, and they're not necessarily going to embrace things like gay marriage and like abortion. And I'm not taking a position on those issues right now, but I'm saying I don't think it's as I don't think they can be as clairvoyant as they like to think about how these folks will vote over the generations following.
I don't need clairvoyance. You just have to look in the states where illegals are voting and see where they do vote. We do know this. George Bush, who had won 2 or 3 elections as governor, always won the Hispanic vote.
Right.
That's over. Those days are over. Republicans don't get a piece of it, and one of the reasons is because this massive number of new, not citizens, new voters are voting Democrat. We don't need clairvoyance here. They come in, they go into the cities, they're being told by their leaders. Matter of fact, name, with the exception of people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, who are, that we just saw during this week, interrogated as if they're false Hispanics by the major media, ABC, CBS, NBC. There are no Hispanic leaders in this country who are not Democrats.
I got to tell you, you're right on all of those points. The only exception I would take to it is that you think that the Hispanic vote is now lost forever, and I don't. I think that the Democratic Party have gotten on top of the football by advancing illegal immigration as their issue, and for lack of better words, kind of caught the GOP off flat-footed, because we're standing by the Constitution while these folks are our government. When I say these folks are actively on the soil of other countries waving people in. The Democratic Party is working hand in hand with the federal bureaucracy to bring in the element you're talking about. But that doesn't change these people's faith. And at some point in time, they're going to sit back and say, wait a minute, I'm voting against myself here. The difference between you and I is...
That may be something what you expect, but that certainly has not been what we've seen in actuality.
Yeah, I got to tell you. Let me give you a little snippet. And by the way, I'm passionately against illegal immigration. I don't want people to think that I'm squishy on this topic. I'm not at all. On the other hand, I spent almost a year in Vegas. And in the Vegas market, what I found were 3 major groups of people. You had East Coast people I hate to be this way, but I am. You have the East Coast people with a really abrasive, foul-mouthed approach to...
I was born in Newark, New Jersey.
There
we go.
Thank you
the
for
proof right there.
Up the issue. The other, and the next, because I kind of separated the folks there were pretty easy by math. They say, okay, a third of the population are absolute fruits and nuts from California. A third of them are New Jersey people with a foul, abrasive approach, and then a third of them were illegal immigrants. And I gotta tell you, those were the third that worked the hardest. Say what you want, and I'm not stepping over my own politics. Illegal is illegal. But when I looked and say, which one of those 3 groups did I want to have a beer with, to use the Obama's approach to politics, I want to work with the folks that were here to work and that actually want to be citizens. And I think that's part of the misnomer of the Democratic Party, by the way. A lot of these folks that they're inviting in that are still waving foreign flags, they don't actually want to be citizens. So we've got to, you follow where I'm getting at with us, we've got to divide this topic up a little bit.
Well, let's take the good part. Let's take the folks that you'd like to have a beer with and that, in fact, are working.
Yep.
Is it public policy? Is it wise public policy that we should be inviting those good people? Let's forget the bad people. Let's forget the bad people. Should we bring them into our schools? Should we providing them with additional financial benefits, even if they're working, even if they're doing the kind of jobs that you'd like to hire somebody to do? Is this wise public policy? The question that's got me so frustrated is that we know that the Democrat Party is pretty much unanimous on this. I don't know if there's a single elected Democrat or a candidate in the Democrat Party
and it goes
who's
to
interested in slowing down illegal immigration.
Right.
The problem is, in the Republican Party, there are not that many that are standing tall to slow it down or to define it. Going forward. Therein lies the issue. If you are a mother, if you have children, if you are under 40 or 50 years old, you're going to be the one who is going to be picking up the bill for these people. You're going to be the one who's going to be picking up the bill for those Americans who don't have jobs, who are now getting SSI or unemployment or any number of other benefits. Is this the kind of thing that we want to encourage going forward?
Picture Matt Wiedenhoff, who folks, just so you know, he's the guy that takes the electronic version of the show and puts it on YouTube after Brian, who runs the show, feeds it up to him. He's driving on the road, probably going crazy about this conversation, so much so that he's on the line right now. Mr. Wiedenhoff, Have you got something brilliant to tell us, or shall I have Brian cut you off?
Well, if you want brilliance, I should have just been there today.
Oh, baby. Well, now you set yourself up, dude. Let's hear some of this Charles Perraultian brilliance.
Well, I'm sitting here listening, and I think of all the excuses that they've given to give us amnesty, and one of the main ones being is that the illegals come over here to take jobs that Americans won't do. Well, a lot of those jobs they consider are in the fields picking berries and help harvest farms. But then that brings me back to a story I heard from our Congressman, Bill Huizenga, who said when he was in his teens, early teens, meaning like 14, he was in the blueberry fields picking blueberries, which helped create his work ethic.
Right. And listen,
that's a great observation.
Listen, and on that point, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, I was picking apples out in a huge apple orchard. And I think he's exactly right. But just to dovetail what you're saying, I also remember being involved in helping the owner of Coopersville Motors Gone By build that store. And when the drywall team came in, there was not a single English-speaking citizen in the entire drywall team. And by the way, I used to drywall. And so that argument is, it is almost as insulting as the we have to give them citizenship and we have to let the other half of their family across the border because we can't break up families. And that argument assumes that we went across the border and dragged half the family over here against their will. And I said, wait a minute, I didn't bring half your family over here and break them up. You came across knowing that you can manipulate our system to bring the other half of your family over. So all of the arguments that they use crash as soon as you instill logic and history.
Yeah, and on that point of breaking up the family, so by allowing the illegals to come here, we don't break up their family. Yet the number one cause of divorce in America is money. If we put Americans out of work, they end up breaking up our families because money becomes strained, which then becomes a marriage that's strained. Then we get a divorce. So we end up breaking up American families to help save illegal families. Right.
So the solution to all of that is so we don't break up their family, we send the half that are here home.
Well, I sure would like to hear our elected officials, in particular the Republicans, because the Democrat Party at least has stood tall and let us know where they stand. I'd like to hear what the Republicans have to say about it.
I would too, but listen, folks, we're over, so we are gonna go to a break. But listen, we'll be right back and pick up on our argument where we left off.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show, in with Jenifer Walsh and Jim Riley.
I'm back, baby.
Oh, scary. Scary. Scary, scary. Listen, I got to tell you, I think Tom McMillan is onto something with the concern over the accuracy, whether it's purposeful or not. A real brief example from that is I went through a gun audit recently for Renegade River, and the ATF does audits periodically, and I went through it. There was a big, long drama over one particular deal about I had delivered a firearm that they said had been rejected under the background check. And after 2.5 weeks of this push back and forth, they finally said, okay, you were right and we were wrong. But if I had not have been outrageously tenacious and saying, no, 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 that didn't happen, then I might have had a big problem. And
well, when you're talking about E-Verify, isn't the overriding concept is, quote, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you, end quote? Trust me?
I don't know if that's the case.
How's that work out,
I don't know if
folks?
that's the case or not, but in my foundation wants to believe in E-Verify because I believe it's necessary for an employer to have the tools to protect themselves.
Yes,
I really do. Now,
Fix it, make it work.
There's elements to it that scare me as a classical liberal-leaning conservative. There are things that scare me about it. On the other hand, having employed people for most of my life, knowing that the elements that we can use to protect ourselves are really limited. So if I have another tool in the toolbox, I like it. Do I want it? I want it to be. I want it to be voluntary. I don't want the federal government to ever have the power to demand that I use it. That's how I feel about that.
Well, I think we are all in agreement. It is a situation in this country that is very unclear. employers don't know, and until we get somebody willing to clear it up,
Listen,
we've got this mess. It'll continue to be a mess.
I got a guy that knows about this way more than the three of us do. Dave Agema, are you on the line with us?
Yes, I am, sir.
Dave Agema, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. It's been a while. I'm glad to hear your voice on the air.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm calling from Phoenix. We're at the RNC meeting.
Very,
you got me just for getting up.
Very nice. Good morning, and thank you very much for jumping in. Dave, listen, what we're debating this morning is the value of E-Verify, and I couldn't think of a better person to help me get my head around that than you. So what's the upside to E-Verify?
Well, the upside to E-Verify, obviously, is you can catch people that are here illegally, and if they don't have a reason to be here, i.e. they can't get a job, they won't be on welfare, they won't be going to our schools, they won't be in our hospitals, and it's basically, it'll solve a security issue, a jobs issue, and a fiscal issue for the state of Michigan. So just to give you an idea, what E-Verify is basically is an internet-based system operated by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in partnership with the Social Security Administration. It doesn't take any new information in. What it does is just, for example, if a employer signs on to it, he gets a number, and when you hire somebody, like if you're going to hire Dave Agema, you take my name or my Social Security number, and usually my driver's license. Of course, I can get driver's license there usually by forged documentation. At least it used to be that way. And then what you do is you just enter my name and Social Security number, and with that number, and send it in Homeland Security, hit a button. In about 3 seconds on average, you'll get a comment back, confirmed or not confirmed. Sometimes it takes a little longer. But if you got a not confirmed, it means that this person's Social Security number and the name doesn't match, or they're overextended on their worker visa, or their green card is expired. So it works very well. Many states use it, or in some process use it, either for state workers or state contractors. Arizona, where I'm here, does it for everything. When they passed it, in short order, they had 40,000 people leave the state. Of course, they went to states like Michigan and other states that don't use it.
What's Dave?
For example, just give you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Republican Party really feels divided on this. At least the members of the party, and you know the folks that tend to be a more libertarian leaning are passionately against it, while the conservatives within the party are singing the praises as you and I are. I don't see a downside to it myself.
Well, the reason for that is I think that some of the libertarians think that there's some kind of new information, and it's not. It's already information the government owns.
Okay.
The government has information on your Social Security number and your name. It knows who gets the worker visas, who's got the green cards. So it's no new information, not at all. And some people think, well, it's the government telling you who can work and who can't work. No, this is a voluntary system. Some states have made it mandatory because they had such trouble with illegal immigration. But let me just give you an idea here. Here's some of the states that use E-Verify in some shape or form. The bill I put in was going to be just for state workers, state contractors, and subcontractors. But anyway, Idaho, Indiana, Arizona, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma, Colorado, Mississippi, Nebraska, Utah, Virginia, and some other ones have just various forms of it. So it works. Most people say it's inaccurate. It's not true. It's very accurate. But they use, it's like 97 or 99.7% accurate. And that small percentage is just, it gets negative. In other words, you get a result back that's not accurate. That usually occurs when somebody just gets married and they didn't change their new name with an existing Social Security number they had. So it clears that up for them, actually, because they realize, oh, yeah, I didn't do that. So I don't see a downside. You got to remember, in 2010 was the last time Federation on American Immigration Reform actually stated that Michigan spends just about $1 billion. It's probably more now on health care, education, welfare, jails, human services, so forth for illegals. Now, who's going to oppose this? That's the question. The people that really oppose this are farmers, because farmers get a lot of illegals coming on their farm, obviously, to work. Another group is some members within the Chamber of Commerce that use illegals. I had an individual that was a cement worker and a road builder. He says, I can't even compete against some of my competitors because they say they're paying the $25 an hour for the jobs they get from the state, but they really don't. They get a kickback.
Right.
So he says, I can't compete. They're driving me out of business. I had an individual who testified in my committee in Lansing who said, I went to get my people tagged and documentation so they could work in the Grand Rapids airport, and I had 5 of my people done. I said, I thought they were legal, and they were actually illegal. And he said, the amazing thing about this is not one of them is a contractor, and he's an illegal.
David,
is a huge issue.
Listen, a guy writes on my Facebook page this morning as I pose this question, as a natural-born American and United States Air Force veteran, E-Verify prevents me from working at most businesses. I ask him how that is, and he responds, he says, it requires federal identification to work. I have no identification. The federal government will not issue me federal identification. When I read that, that doesn't make any sense to me. Does it to you?
Makes no sense whatsoever. That's the similar thing I heard from some legislators who didn't understand what E-Verify actually checked. Remember, it's Social Security, green cards, worker visa. Everybody that's in the military has an ID. That's absolutely not true. I mean, he's blowing smoke. And one person said, well, you know, we have undocumented workers and illegals are two different things. Absolutely false.
Right.
If somebody is undocumented, it means they're not here legally.
Right.
And if you want to see what, for example, look at Mexico's rules for illegal immigration. First time they catch you, 2 years in jail. Second time, 10 years in jail. If you are a legal immigrant or an illegal immigrant, you cannot be involved with politics. You can never run for an office. You cannot put your flag next to the Mexican flag. You cannot change the demographics of the country, or they will remove you.
In
citizens arrest.
In America, Dave, we take our flag down and put theirs up.
I know.
That's insane.
And then another thing, they have citizens arrest. If they think you're illegal, a citizen can arrest you in Mexico and turn you over to the authorities, and the authorities will figure out whether you are or you're not.
Listen, Dave Agema, I've got to stop you because the time guy is telling me I'm almost out of time. But listen, this is going to be a huge presidential campaign issue. So when you get back in Michigan, let's schedule a time to get you in here, and let's go back over immigration again.
Not a problem. Anytime. It's been
very,
my
very
goal.
nice. Thank you very, very much, Dave Agema. And Jenifer, thank you for
day.
being on the show with us. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
And Jim, thank you very much for earning your pay again.
That's right, baby. I'm going to get that lawyer real soon for my illegal money.
Illegal money. You should be ashamed. He's overpaid. He got free coffee. He got free water.
That's the truth, baby.
Boy, you're always demanding more benefits. Always demand. Is he putting anything forward? No. Just sits there, does his math wrong. 50 years ago to D-Day. 15 seconds, Brian. I'm going to do it right to the very, very end. I'm telling you, I'm on it. So you got to find us on Facebook, and you got to find us at the MikeHewittShow.com. Folks, we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.